thought I had been told by the Holy Spirit I was supposed to marry this other person. Yeah, it's still sad for me. Well, I was also forced out of it. I came in and I knew in my gut it was probably not the best idea. You know, one day you're going to know you don't have to do things through suffering.
So welcome to Tales of Transformation episode 2.
Oh, that's my favorite number. I was born on November 2nd.
Me
2:22 in the morning.
Okay, so episode 2, and it's Amyann's favorite number.
And my name's made of 2 names.
Yes.
Amy and Anne.
Yeah, 2. I would love for you to introduce yourself to everybody.
Okay, sweet. My name is Amyann, and I'm a sacred sexual priestess, and basically like a whole, in muggle terms, holistic sex coach, and transformational arts coach using sacred sexual energy. So a performance artist.
So the conversation that I would love to have with you is around your journey from kind of childhood to getting to be able to do these types of things that you're doing, and how you found the courage and the resilience and the empowered parts of you that made it possible for you to step into this world. So let's start from the beginning. So what was your childhood like?
My childhood was quite idyllic in some ways, because I was raised on a beef cattle farm out in the countryside, and in this like century-old yellow brick house. And I had lots of fodder for the imagination in this land, like acres and acres. We lived on 100 acres of land, like forest land, meadowland, and fields. And I would roam that very freely with my sister. And then I would roam the lands around it too. There were all kinds of conservation areas and rolling hills and ponds. And yeah, it was really beautiful for a child to grow up with that much nature around her. But it was an interesting contrast between that world and then my mom's very Christian, fundamentalist, evangelical worldview. She loved nature too, and she's actually, I think she's like a closeted witch. She would never think that of herself, but she has a really deep connection to nature and plants, and had these beautiful gardens, herb gardens, vegetable gardens. She would grow herbs and then dry them, and she would make these beautiful dried bouquets with them, and she would use them for cooking, and she learned about herbal medicine and all these things, but it was all within like, this is God's world that he created, you know, these are but so there was an interesting combination of this like hidden witchy side of her, but then this belief that, you know, God is Father God and masculine, and sexuality is only for marriage, and you don't talk about it. And this is like, what do we call this? What do they call this? Bunsi. Some slang, Hungarian something my ancestry, but that's what it was called. And you don't touch it. Besides washing it, you wash it with a washcloth, and it's not spoken of, and it's dirty, and it's like where waste comes out, kind of thing. So and like nature was not, it's like a gift from God, but animals don't have spirits, and like it was so sad when our cats would die or our dogs would die, and it's like, unfortunately, we're not going to see them again because they don't have souls, you know, but like maybe God will recreate them in a new heaven and new earth. And it was really interesting. And I craved like fairyland, actually. I would go and sit with trees and try to listen for voices, or listen for the nature spirits in rocks and these different things. And it's like I got really frustrated because I felt that it must be true, but I could never really access it. And so I just kind of retreated into realms of imagination and play with my sister. And basically later in life, especially in my teen years, my early teens, I really started questioning my worldview, but some things kind of brought me back into it. And then I tried to syncretize my fantasy worlds and the nature spirit world, nature as being alive, with Christianity through the Chronicles of Narnia, through Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Like, that kind of was bringing the worlds together, and it kind of kept me going in my teenage years, because I had like a mythic version, almost like mystical version of Christianity through the Chronicles of Narnia, and I started like worshiping Jesus as Aslan was my way in. And then, in my early 20s, I couldn't like stuff it down anymore. And I was studying at a Christian university, and really just started getting so angry at the God of the Old Testament and this like bullshit stuff that he would do, like punishing people, like burning fields of cattle, burning down towns, like, I don't know, cutting up what, like, I guess one woman was cut up into pieces for like her promiscuity or something, her transgressions. And like, I lost my mind at one point, and I remember like screaming and crying onto the rug in my dorm and just like pounding the ground and feeling I wanted to rip my hair out. And it was just like, if this is the God, like if you're a real God, like I don't want to serve you anymore. Like this is not who I want to serve. And around that time I started like meditating in nature with this tree on campus, and had a vision of this nature spirit in this tree, and all these winds were whisking around me, and they captured my hair and my heart, and I felt this really magical experience. Like my hair stood on end. I was like, what is happening? And then I was like, is this my imagination? What's happening? But that night I had a dream of walking on a barren landscape that was really polluted, and there were no plants growing on it. I was walking with two children. I was holding their hands, and every step we took, flowers started blooming and blossoming at our feet. And I just really started seeking the Earth Mother and the divine feminine aspects of God in a deeper way. And soon after left the church and left my early marriage. And there was an instance where I got married at 21, and my husband's father, we went on a camping trip with my husband's family, and my husband's father saw these books that I had. I left them out on a picnic table in the moonlight, and there was an Earth Prayers book and Dance of the Dissident Daughter, which is by this woman who was raised in a Baptist tradition but started having these visions of the goddess come to her, and she went on this quest to find the female god, Mother God. And my father-in-law found the books. I guess it was a full moon night, and he came out of his tent.
And it was illuminated.
I
just could see it unfolding.
It was illuminated for him, and he went up to them and like started reading them. And I guess he couldn't sleep after, and he was convicted in his heart that these were satanic books. And they needed to be burned. And he didn't have the guts to tell me, but he told my husband. And when my husband told me this, I literally started having like I started shaking my whole body. I started having like flashes of like the burning times and witches being burned. And I almost like puked. I went into the woods and was screaming into the earth and just like, this cannot happen. Like, what the hell? And it was the end for me. I was like, I cannot be in this family anymore. And I started finding my way out shortly after. But that was a big wake up call, and that feeling in my body, this echo of ancient trauma. I was like, whoa. And I didn't know what I thought about past lives, but it was like more and more I was having memories of other timelines and things coming through and chance encounters with people that I was like, what is, because I was raised to believe we only have one life. And that's it. You make of it what you can. You ask Jesus into your heart, and if he comes into your heart and forgives you your sins, then you go to heaven. Otherwise, hell, eternal punishment, damnation forever. You got one life, that's it. But like, my worldview was like expanding out really fast.
Okay, let me pause you there.
Yes.
So let's go back to little Amy.
Yes.
And she's in the forest, in the lands of the 100 acres, and he was talking about like imagining and creating these worlds, which a lot of us do when we are this way inclined. At what point did you feel that that difference between what you were allowed to imagine and what was beyond what was permitted in your family and in your belief system that you were born into?
Can you say that again?
So there would be this kind of part of your imagination that wouldn't be accepted within your family and within the belief system that you were born into. And I wonder if you had any memories or an idea of at what point at which you knew this is what I'm allowed to believe, and this is outside of that box, but I'm going to go feel it and do it anyway.
At which point I knew that?
Because I expect you didn't go home and tell your mom you were like playing with the spirits, or that you were imagining that you were doing so in any way.
I mean, I'm not sure what I told her. Actually, I can't really remember, but I was like fully immersed in these mythic realms. I don't know how to answer your question because I'm not really sure. I think I went fully into it, but for my mom, it's like that was the world of imagination.
Yeah.
And as long as I knew that that was imaginary, then it was safe.
Yeah.
But, you know, like she wouldn't even let us watch Care Bears because there was like a warlock or a witch in it and there was magic in it. And anything with magic or witches was forbidden us until we got a little bit older, and then like she just couldn't stop it. And even when I first brought home The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, she was like, "What is this book you're reading?" And I tried hiding it from her. And she was like, "Wait, C.S. Lewis, that sounds familiar. It sounds like a name I studied in Bible college." And it was like I had a knife stabbed through my gut because I like literally felt like I found my spiritual truth in these books, and I was like, no, I can't be Christian. Like I was 11, and I was like, please, don't be Christian. And it ended up being Christian. I was really upset. But yeah, so it was like that cusp. It's like Narnia was like my way in. Actually, it allowed me to play in that world a little bit more expansively as a teenager, while my mom still approved of it because it was Christian. Yeah.
And it's interesting that that's what found you. It was like to be given something that meets the approval of both worlds, the one you want to enter and the one that you're permitted to enter.
Yes.
But from two very different perspectives, where she was able to approve it, and you were like, I have found my cupboard into into that world. And you said that you played these games with your sister.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about her and her role in these games, or her commitment to this imaginary world?
Yeah. I mean, she was 3.5 years younger than me. So a lot of what I remember is me creating worlds and then her kind of playing along and like being swept into it. And like, especially with Barbies, I would be like, Erin, say this and this, or do this, we're about to do this thing. And she'd be like, pretend I said that. Like,
what she said.
Exactly. And it was really like, I don't know, it was really, I think, a lot of my stuff. But I also she ended up really liking it at times. Like, I know she still talks about this one game we played called The Bazaar. And I would play these different, I created this world in our basement and then made these different characters that she had. It's really like what I do with these adult labyrinths now. But she would go downstairs and like meet these different characters, and they would give her hints and clues, and she would go to, follow the clues to have this whole adventure. And I would play all these different characters for her. And like she loved these things. I also made like elaborate birthdays for her with like quests and treasure hunts and puzzles and characters. And
I feel like I'm really like, gosh, we're the same.
Wow, you did that with your sibling?
I have my older sister, and for her hen do, like I did this whole like quest all across like the central London with these clues and these like maps, and it was I'm like, that's my vibe too.
I love that.
Yeah.
You were the little one that like you were creating it for her, or she created it for you?
She's actually quite creative too. Yeah, she's quite creative too, and I think we played our roles. I was definitely the more expressive, like storytelling, playing the characters one, and she would be behind the camera and be like, okay, do it again, and I'll film it, and it's incredible. It's incredible, like the role the other person plays, because they've traveled through the same room. You shared a home with them, and then they have this kind of thread that they've woven in with you.
That's so true. Yeah, my sister's quite creative as well. Yeah, she was her own person as well, but like when she was younger, I think it was her playing into my world. I remember a very distinct time where she decided to go play with a friend on the road instead of me. I was so upset with her because I think I was actually like 13 and I was like, I'm to be too old to be playing Barbies with you anyway. And I was so mad at her. And then I refused to play with her after that for a while. But I think back to it.
How dare she?
Yeah, I know. How dare she choose
She
someone else
infuriated the witch.
over me. How dare you refuse my fairy realms? I shut the door on you. No more can you enter. Yeah, that's interesting.
So, as you grew up and you started having access to this other material, because of course, you know, school and books and movies and things like that, at what point did it become like, oh, this could be an actual thing? Because you speak of like being later on feeling like the energies and the elements and feeling all those different timelines and being persecuted and all those things activating. At what point did it go beyond imagination and be like, there's something else at play here, there's something else working its way through me or trying to communicate with me or wanting to express itself or calling or summoning an aspect of me that's been in slumber?
I felt it a little bit when I was I was a teacher or counselor in this nature education program in the green spaces in Toronto. And there were some people in that we worked with some Indigenous people, and there was like a lineage of Indigenous place-based teaching that we were working with. And I was feeling it somewhat there, but still it was still kind of in the mind. But yeah, there was a sacred tradition in like the land honoring and in medicine wheel teachings, and I was feeling that, but there was still like I was still blocked to feeling some deeper levels of it. And I remember this couple that really were deep in it, like they were nature, like they were animal trackers, and they made herbal medicines out of like foraged herbs and plants, and you know, and they have their own company and all these things. And they both said to me, like, you're a witch, Amyann, like, you're such a witch, you don't even know how powerful you are. And I was like, and I was writing these storylines for this nature education and creating plays and immersive experiences for kids to experience these characters in the woods and learn from them about nature, nature spirits. And it's like I couldn't fully see through the veil yet, but I was, you know, it was getting closer. And then I think, what was the big one? When I was debating leaving my husband at 25, I went to an osteopath, and she was like, she was very like science-based, but at one point she's like, I don't normally do this, but she's like, there is a very distinct message coming through for you and it won't go away. And like, it just keeps dropping in. And she's like, I have to tell you, the grandmothers are with you. And something snapped in me, and I started bawling, and my liver just like released all this, I don't know what. And I feel them. I could feel the presence of these grandmothers. And then I went home and I started talking to them in the mirror, and I felt their presence. I felt their power. I felt their help. And it was like knowing their strength. It's like I could get out of that marriage and get out of the church and get out of that worldview. And during that time, I had a vision of a dragon that was like sleeping under the earth, and it had been covered with so many levels of dirt and debris, and it was dormant for so long, but now it was like it couldn't stay dormant anymore. It was like literally cracking out of the earth, and its wings were opening. And I witnessed it like pop out of the earth and then like burn shit down. And later I found out that was my womb energy and my like Kundalini energy, my divine feminine energy, and she just needed to go hog wild for a while. So and kind of destroy all these like confines that my worldview and upbringing had placed on me, and discover who she was for herself.
So that's really interesting, because you got married at 21, and by 25 you were feeling all of these signs, all of these messages coming from within and around you, saying this isn't aligned for you, there's something more for you. Because we can have these messages that say this isn't aligned, you're not supposed to be here. But if we're also not given the message that there is something more for you, there is more that you can be, there is more that you can experience, there's something else, there's a different worldview, there's a different perspective, there's power, there's whatever it is, if it's just that this isn't for you and then nothing to move towards, that can be, that doesn't provide us a path. That just means that we're still in the same spot, but we're confused, right? There's no clarity. So did you really feel like you got both the message that this isn't for you and there is something more for you, or were you just given the message that this isn't for you?
First it was, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was true. And I was in this really somewhat dark liminal zone of like, holy shit, I don't know what I believe anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember though feeling like when I left my husband and I moved to Toronto, I had this feeling of being reborn into humanity.
Yeah.
Because like the whole Christian evangelical story is like you're reborn into Christianity, reborn by the blood of Jesus into this like new life. And that story that I had been fed my whole life really made me feel separate from the rest of humanity. And the rest of humanity was other and needed saving and needed to be prayed for. And they were going to hell. And I had this experience of like the opposite, where I all of a sudden became equals with everyone. And I was free. It was like the most incredible sense of freedom of like, oh my God, I'm allowed to be human. I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to experience my life on my terms. And I don't have to fear that I'm going to hell or I'm going to be damned for like being a human. And like a really strong sense of being reborn into humanity. Yeah, it was very emotional at that time. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, that's stunning. That's stunning.
Yeah.
Because we have these rebirth experiences, but to have like one, initiatory, very significant one that then opens up the pathway to do that cycle more quickly, because that's what happens when you do this work. The cycles are quicker and
So much quicker.
yeah, we
Once
get
a month.
we just get used to, okay, well, I understand that there's a purification and there is death and there is rebirth and there is the manifestation process and all of those things that happen within that wheel, and you learn to surrender into it. But it was almost like you were brought to your knees. You were kind of brought to that surrender. You were taught what that surrender is through this crisis that happened, because you moved out of a marriage, you moved out of your place of origin, you moved out of the religion you were born into and a family structure that was taught as right. And not only was it taught as right, it was taught in such a way that everything outside of this is wrong and sinful.
That's right.
And damaging for you. So that is going to bring you to your knees, right?
Very much so.
And teach you surrender, so that you can then become a master of surrender, which you would have to be to do the kind of work you do.
I don't know if I call myself a master yet, but yeah, learning every day.
Yeah. Mastery with loads of space for refinement.
Oh yes, always. Surrender. It's like, for a while that was like the most scary word. Yeah, no, it's much more delightful and orgasmic.
In terms of your, and you can share as much as you feel comfortable, in terms of when you entered your marriage, was there any part of you that was doubtful of whether it matched who you were truly? Because it sounds like you were aware of yourself and aware of these kind of irregularities in what you should be and what you were feeling. Did you notice that as you entered that marriage, and were you aware of any hopes that the marriage could kind of fix any lofty ideas you might be having or anything like that?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I definitely felt so much doubt, and like my body was telling me not to get married, but I trumped it. Yeah, I actually remember revisiting my childhood school like a week before I was supposed to get married, a week or two, and I was swinging on a swing and I was trying to connect with my future self. I remember being like, okay, future Amyann, can you connect? Can you please tell me what I should do right now? Can you please show me? Like, I really am feeling this is not a good idea, and I just need to know, like, please give me any indication. Like, can I get out of this? Like, should I get out of it? And I didn't get a clear signal. I didn't get the clear, like, drop in. But I did tell my mom at one point, like, I don't think I can go through with it. Like, I don't want to get married. And she was like, well, don't expect me to help you with any other wedding again. Because she had put so much work into it. It was happening on the family farm and all these things. And I just was like, okay, I guess I have to do this. And I also had this big notion of sacrifice and like sacrificing my desires for God's desires, Jesus's desires, like the higher good or whatever, which is interesting because I still know about the highest good for all. But anyway, it was like this self-sacrificial thing. And so even me dating this man, like I wasn't attracted to him in the beginning. I was actually way more attracted to his brother, but his brother and I wasn't like a thing. And he had just gone out of a relationship. He was attracted to me. I kind of was open to it. He was cute. I was like, okay, I just got burned by, thought I had been told by the Holy Spirit I was supposed to marry this other person, and that person got married to someone else. And so I was like, wow, I can't hear the Holy Spirit. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Trust yourself.
And I stopped trusting myself. And I was like, that was my ideal. Like at the time, he was studying medieval and Renaissance studies, which I was super into. He was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. He looked like an elfin fairy man, and curly hair, just so gorgeous. And I had actually drawn his face before I met him, and like it just so many things. And I thought like he was going to be a professor. I wanted to be a professor of English literature and medieval literature, and I was like, he's my person. And then he married someone else, and then I was just like, okay, looks like maybe I'm not allowed to have my desires. I'm not allowed to have what lights me up the most. So I'm going to settle and accept this person who we don't have the same taste in music. He's not a scholar. He's not an academic. He's a small engine mechanic. But he loves Jesus, or like, he's very religious. He's very devout. My mom loves him. Okay, I'm just going to trust what's being brought to me. I'm going to sacrifice myself for this thing. And that's what I did. And then what was the question again? I don't know.
Whether you noticed anything, as you went into that marriage, not feeling aligned.
Yeah, so yes, but I decided I'm going to trump this. So even before, I think it was a couple days before the wedding, I was like, I can't do this, Mom. And then she said that, and I was like, oh my God, swallow it. I'm going to do it. And even when I was walking down the aisle, there was a moment where I forgot to like hug because my parents walked me down to a certain point, and then I walked alone, and I was like, oh shit, I was supposed to hug my parents. And I ran back, and I was like, wow, I could keep running. I could run away from this whole thing. I was like, no, everyone's watching me. Okay. So I went and like hugged my mom, hugged my dad. I'm like, I have to prove them wrong. I can make this young marriage work. Like so much of my family was like, don't do it. But my parents were about it. And anyway, and so I married this person and knew that it was not quite for me, but then tried to make it happen. And the connection was horrible. I fell in love with someone else really soon after. And was just not present. It was very difficult to be present in that marriage. And very difficult to try to be like the good Christian wife. And
And at any point, so you would have done one of two things: either really try your best to be that good Christian wife, or just rebel against any expectation within those four walls of your home. Which did you choose? Or did it kind of swing?
It was swinging. Yeah. It would swing. And I didn't really have an affair with this person that I fell in love with, but we became like best of friends, and he would come and sleep on our couch, and like I would go and hang out with his friends. He was like, and we worked at a Christian farm camp together, and like I was just so enamored with him and the world that I never really experienced because I was the good girl, and I was hanging out with them so many nights and like not being home with my husband, and for some reason he didn't care, or he seemed to care. Like, it was so weird. But yeah, it was a pendulum swing of both. That was like little rebellions, but not the full rebellion. And then one day I got drunk for the first time, and like that guy that I was in love with tried making out with me, and I stopped him, and like until later when I fully decided to leave, and I fell in love with someone else who was my partner for 9 years after.
And did that feel like more of an aligned match for who you were growing into and all of those experiences that you can't speak about in the Christian world?
Yeah, 100 million %. Yeah, the man I fell in love with. So I moved into a intentional community home, like a Christian intentional community home with my husband in an attempt to kind of save our marriage and like be part of something bigger. And I found like a tantric book. I didn't know it was tantric, but I was like trying to heal our sexuality. And things were kind of like a tiny bit better, but not. And then I just had this massive heart opening with this other man in the house, and we became best friends. And he was also questioning the Christian church, and he was also really interested in like the feminine aspects of divinity and in Narnia and in magic and fantasy and mysticism and philosophy. And we just met each other in all these places that my husband couldn't meet me. And we fell in love, and then told the house that we had, and the house freaked out, and it was like, this is an emotional affair and all these things. And I left. I chose to leave, and then he soon left and followed me to Toronto soon after. And we were together for 9 years. It was amazing.
Yeah. And what do you feel had to be the depth of that experience with him? Was it that you grew beyond, or perhaps he grew or evolved in ways that no longer fit this vision that you were sharing together?
Yeah, it's still sad for me. Like, it's almost 5 years later, but from when we broke up. But yeah, I felt like I was growing. Maybe we both were, but it felt like we had made such a vast container for each other, but it's like I was growing even beyond the confines of that container. And we did open our relationship, but it still wasn't, and he wanted it too eventually. But it just still wasn't enough. There was something more I was supposed to do in my life, but I didn't quite know what. Part of it was like doing healing work, and he wasn't about me quitting my job for that. He's like, you don't have like consistent clients, you don't, how maybe just like do part-time, and it was very like practical and rational. And something about that wasn't feeling right. And then I also met a twin flame. But then with my twin flame, he like started unlocking all of these capacities in my body, and it was like he was playing my body like an instrument. I didn't even know myself that I could do the things that I did. I fell so hard in love with him. Yeah, that was a massive initiation, and I had a Kundalini awakening during that time. I left my partner, but this twin flame said to me, if you ever leave him, I won't be the one to pick up the pieces, and like, I won't play the role he played when you left your marriage. You need to learn how to be your own masculine. Okay. So we're going to be done when you leave this person. Oh. And it was all like out in the open that I was like, okay, that's brutal, but okay. And sure enough, like, I didn't even tell him at first when we broke up. And then when he found out, he was like, why don't you tell him? He was so sweet about it, and he was so caring. But then within the next couple of weeks, it all crumbled, and he started getting like abusive and mean and like dark, and apparently making fun of me to his other girl and his roommates. Like, it was so wild. And when I had a Kundalini awakening, I called him and told him about it from the Tantra training. He's like, that's bullshit, I don't believe you. And he like hung up the phone. And it was super wild, because like I was having transcendent experiences and like visions and all these things. And I know he was too, but he never wanted to talk about it. So that was the catalyst for leaving my soulmate. The 9-year partner was the soulmate of mine, hands down, 100%. And I remember having a crossroads. I was in a psychedelic ceremony with my ayahuasca shaman and my partner and some friends, and I was shown like a crossroads. It was like I had this choice to pursue this priestess shamanic path, like my ayahuasca shaman, and she was like this beacon of like what I could be. But she was in her 40s and she was single. And really dedicated to the medicine and really dedicated to her path of like as healer. And I was in my early 30s, and I had my soulmate, and she was looking for her soulmate, and I was like, I'm not choosing. No, that's cool. I can be another lifetime. I'm keeping my life partner. I'm keeping my soulmate. It's cool. And I was so scared during that ceremony. I remember just holding on to him and crying and crying and crying. He was like, what's wrong? And I'm just like, I can't lose you. Like, it's not happening. I'm not choosing that. But then it was actually the next day after that I met my twin flame. It's the day after that ceremony that the twin flame came in, and he had the same statue. It was so my ayahuasca shaman came to, she brought this black jaguar, the statue, and she put it on the altar for our ceremony. And then the next day I went to my women's circle, and then I went to a Kundalini yoga class, a rebirthing class. Left the Kundalini yoga class, called my shaman, it was all in white, talking to her, and I was like, what the heck happened last night? Like, that was insanity. Like, was that an initiation? Like, crazy shit happened that night. And I had like a womb awakening and just with the energies. And I'm asking, she couldn't give me answers. And this man was across the road gardening in his front, and he was watching me. And at one point he came over and put a flower behind my ear and walked away. And I was just like, And anyway, but I was like, okay. And I just like went over to his house after and knocked on the door, and he invited me in and showed me his art and his grandfather's art and took me onto the roof. And the first thing I saw when I walked to his house was the same jaguar statue, same size, same everything, but it was white. There's a black one and a white one. And that was like, yeah, that meeting with him was nuts. And then I like avoided him for a couple months, but he just kept pursuing me, and we finally met up again around summer solstice. And then that was the beginning of the end. He came in to initiate me out of my very safe relationship into my priestessing, my full-time priestessing. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the courage that it took to quit your job, your teaching and education and all the studying that you were doing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people have this perception that people that do the kind of work that you do, you know, just have nothing better to do or something, and they're just doing this stuff and just speaking random things. But, you know, a lot of women that do this kind of work come from a solid academic background, and they've been summoned into this work. They've been called there the path. You don't choose the path, it chooses you, just like you demonstrated with that story. Like you actively, with your mind, said, I want to stay with you, this person that you were with.
Yes.
But you woke up the next day and life had other plans. Yeah. So how did it look to make that transition from your career, which is stable and safe and, you know, respectable, into the world you then entered?
Well, I was also forced out of it because it's so interesting. I knew I had to leave my partner like a couple years before I left him. I knew I was supposed to leave, but I wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
And I stuck it out. And then it's like I had to have this dramatic like ending. I also I did this white tantra initiation and then was fasting from any alcohol or weed for 40 days, and then was visited by Isis and Mary Magdalene in a very strong Kundalini vision takeover. And they came to me and said, like, are you ready to leave your partner now? And this is actually before I started hanging out with my twin flame more. And in that vision, all these memories from past lifetimes came back, and they showed me my priestess path and like what I'm here to do and everything. And I saw my relationship on the palm of my hand, and I remember feeling so overcome with love, and that the love was so beyond just this soulmate relationship, and that I was the love was with me no matter what. And so I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I blew it. I remember blowing it off my hand, and then they were pouring their love and surrounding me. They were just like, yes, yes, yes. And then I remember thinking, okay, I'm such a good girl. Like, I let it go. I detached. Maybe they'll let me keep it. And they did not. But it's okay. It's also me. So, so teaching, I also kind of was holding on. I knew I needed to leave after I was a Waldorf teacher. And I had taken...
Yeah, tell us what that means.
It's like a mystery school for kids, really. It's Rudolf Steiner was this Austrian mystic. And he started this Waldorf, like Steiner Waldorf education system. And I was trained as a public school teacher, but in a holistic vein. And then I went and did a Waldorf teaching certificate as well. And I was the teacher of the school. And you take a class. Normally you take a class in grade 1 and you take them all the way through to grade 8. But they were having this class was having difficulty with their like homeroom teacher kind of thing. And so they were looking for a new teacher to take this class, to take them from grade 5 to grade 8. And I came in and I knew in my gut it was probably not the best idea, but I also had this other voice being like, this is like, it's for your learning. And I actually talked to a shaman at the time, and she was like, Amyann, you know, one day you're going to know you don't have to do things through suffering. And like, you don't have to struggle so much for your lessons. And I heard it and I was like, I gotta do this. and I went and took this class, and it was like one of the most grueling things I've ever experienced. It was mostly boys, but they had undiagnosed. A lot of them have undiagnosed learning needs and behavioral, and yeah, I didn't have an assistant. It was just nuts a lot of the time, and I had not good boundaries, and I was learning how to be a teacher. And by the time grade 7 was done, it was like we actually had a woman come in and like assess the children, and she was like, yeah, 12 out of 13 of these children, or something like that, should be in my special needs school, like special ed school. And I was like, okay. So it was so traumatizing, and the stuff that was going down and just the chaos that I wanted to leave. And my partner at the time was like, they're making it better for you. They're increasing your salary. They're bringing in a assistant. It's not just my partner. Like, I also was thinking these things, you know? And so I stuck it out. And so I was like, okay. And we had this new kid come, and it seemed to be really good. Like, the start of the year was amazing. And then I broke up with my partner. And then the twin flame and I broke up, and I had the Kundalini awakening. And then after I came back after Christmas break, things just started. I'm not really sure. I was after my Kundalini awakening, and I was also starting to take clients for some of the Tantra pieces and the healing pieces. And I don't know. I don't even know how much to get into right now, but basically I was forced out of teaching in a very dramatic fashion where the king made up a story. And I had to go under investigation, and like these accusations were just so damaging to I had to leave teaching. 1 month before the school year ended, 1 month before I graduated this class. I led him through a meditation after class, which probably I shouldn't have led him through, but he was really stressed, and I didn't know my full power yet. It was a grounding meditation. It was way too much, I think, and he didn't understand how to place it. It was a very difficult situation. And I don't know exactly what happened, but and so I had to leave in this really dramatic fashion. I still have dreams about it. Anyway, I was recapitulating those feelings from the other timelines, whether or not my soul lived those, or I was feeling the feminine through the ages. It was like so much trauma coming out of my cells and nervous system. It was nuts. So I left. I had to leave, and because they were even proposing to me, you know, like, we know you want to leave teaching, but like, do you want to teach as an English teacher part-time while you're doing your other, like, your healing modality or whatever? And I was going to do that. I was going to teach part-time, even though I didn't want to. I was like, it's safety. And the universe was like, nah, no more safety net. Like, it's time.
It's done.
So that was nearly 5 years ago.
That's hard. That's hard.
It was a big initiation.
How did you navigate that emotionally?
I did. I had the girls like in this house. I had like moved from my I had a house with my partner, and I moved into this house with other priestesses, and it was just so good to have them and feel held in that space, and felt like, of course, they knew who I was and trusted me, and like, you know, really supported me through it all, and it was beautiful. And what was the question? How did I navigate myself emotionally? I mean, I went through many waves of all kinds of things, like the shock, the despair, the grief, the anger, also the relief. Though there was like a deep part of me that was incredibly relieved to leave that place and not have to end the school year with them. Actually, it had gotten so intense and uncomfortable. So,
I mean, I have a question. Why didn't you just move schools?
I don't know. I had this story in my head that I wasn't good at finishing things.
Okay.
And I needed to finish it, see it through all the way. And like, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it somehow.
No.
It was bananas.
It's just way out of your remit.
That's the energetic of working with them. Right? Like, I don't know, they like saw right through me. That's how like it's just, they were, it was just pretty nuts. Also,
And how do you feel about your work now, what it does for you, how it serves you? Because obviously this work is your service, your gift.
Yeah.
But how is it gifting you now, where you're at?
That's a good question. How is it gifting me now where I'm at? I don't know. I just feel like I'm on the right path. I feel like I am doing the thing that I came here to do, and I love my life, and I love what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, makes me happy. And I love teaching adults, and it working with teenagers and boys really taught me a lot about boy psychology and male psychology, and now it really helps me working with adult men. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taught me a lot about boundaries too, man. Holy.
Yeah.
I had to go to boundaries counseling after the whole fiasco, and
Yeah.
it's a terrible therapist I had, but I did learn some things.
Yeah. And your sister, did she follow the same path or a similar path?
No, she's more traditional
Mm-hmm.
and still kind of in the Christian faith, but she's having her own spiritual awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and it's her own version of it. I've had a vision of us being in our 50s and being on the same page.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
different route.
All roads lead to Rome.
Yeah, she's married with kids.
Yeah.
A teacher as well.
Yeah. And, in more classical tantra, the beautiful thing about it is it's for everyone. It's for people who have jobs, people who have children, people who have, and it's not the tantra that is, westernized. It's that sacred path where divinity and consciousness is in everything.
Yeah.
And there's totally space to have your family and a job and kids and a husband, and to kind of then play the archetype of the priestess or whatever it is that wants to come through later on, and you can do it that way around too. Yeah, it's very available. Your 9 years, the lover, the partner, do you know what his path was in the end, or where he's ended up?
Yeah, he has a beautiful partner now, and I think they're going to get married and have kiddos, which is what he always wanted. Yeah, she's more grounded. She's a lawyer. And he ended up falling in love with another witchy type right after me. And similar thing where she kind of expanded beyond their partnership, but he's a bit of an initiator of the wild feminine and our freedom and us finding ourselves. He's such a safe space for us to do that.
Yeah.
But after that, he was like, okay, I think I need to find someone with a different archetype now.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it works.
It does.
It works for him.
Yeah.
But gratitude to him for what,
So much gratitude. I love him so much.
Yeah.
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been grieving him again this summer a
Yeah.
lot, as I feel like I'm preparing for another partnership hopefully soon. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any aspects of him that you wish to bring into that new partnership that you're calling in?
yeah, devotion. His unwavering devotion, unquestioning. I was his whole world, and I would love that again. I haven't really found that since.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not that I'm his whole world, but
Yeah.
devotion.
Yeah.
And the complementariness of our interests and worldview and the path we were walking together beside each other for so long.
Yeah. So let's start closing up.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I guess my kind of rounding up question is, what's your vision for you? Because that's some path, and it's your transformation has been kind of initiated through crisis, and many of those stories you've told us. What would you like to see as your ultimate vision, and how would you like it to unfold? Because as you were told, it doesn't always have to be through suffering.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I would love it for no more crises. I've learned a lot from crises. Very traumatizing, nervous system disrupting moments in my life. Great to just easily move forward now. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I've had so many deaths and rebirths. I'm sure I will keep going with that, but I would like to just have more easeful surrender and not to hold on to things so long that I have to have dramatic endings, because I'm not detaching, Yeah.
So Amyann, in 5 years, health, wealth, love, and the gift you're giving to the world. What does that look like? What's the vision?
That's so interesting. The first moment I was like, whoa, like maybe there's a kid in there, which is new for me because I don't know if I want kids. But cool. Who knows? What's the vision? I mean, for the longest time, I've wanted to rebuild the goddess temples and like have an actual beautiful, like resplendent, classical, modern looking, pillared marble.
Yeah.
So
I see it.
Golden throne.
Yeah.
Throne ceremonies. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's actually what's going to happen or if that's just guiding me to whatever I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'd really love to rebuild the goddess temples and these traditions, to just bring them back, the new version, this moment's version of these.
These modern mystery school type
Yeah.
vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you were always a teacher.
I know, yeah, and I would love to initiate the higher ups in society, you know, the movers and the shakers, the presidents, the prime ministers, and the modern kings and pharaohs, you know, to their true selves and their soul nature and back to the feminine mysteries, to awaken to the feminine mysteries so that they can bring those and just reshape the world in a different way, an earth honoring way.
Beautiful. Is there anything you want to share with the world before we close?
Yeah, one of the things that I was taught to really fear growing up was my heart, because the heart leads you astray in the Christian tradition. But I don't believe that. I believe that the heart leads you to where exactly you're supposed to be. Like follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell says, and everything else follows. You know, you might think that you're chasing a certain thing. Often it's like the feeling of in love, or like that person, or that promise of that union. But it's never really that. It's like you're always just finding yourself in all of these things. But like follow the thing that lights you up, and it'll always be the next step on your path to finding more and more of yourself. Yeah, so follow your bliss, follow your heart.
That's it. Ta-da! Thank you so much. Yeah. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. It's so worth it. More and more of you coming home.